Our last one is Patrick Sell. So Patrick is another thing about top 10, because I knew Patrick before this, but I think we've gotten to know each other even better because of the whole top 10 and talking about things and going through it. So one of the advantages. But Patrick, of course, is the Director of Disbursements and Funding Utilization. So he's got a pretty important job, and I think everybody here probably knows him and has communicated and asked for his help from time to time, and I've been doing a lot lately. Patrick also lived in DC for 10 years, which I think is kind of the seed of this talk, because in his time in DC, he got to travel all over the world, had some really cool experiences. And I do have to let you know one other thing that you may or may not know about Patrick, is he's a very noted purveyor of really bad dad jokes. I don't know if he has any today or not, but I know he has a slew of them. But I'm going to let him take it from here and share his stories from abroad and how that can translate into some leadership lessons for all of us. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks, everyone. It's great to be here. So something, as Dan mentioned, that folks might not have known is that I did travel a lot in my previous life, and it was during those times that really left an imprint on me. And I'm here to share some stories. So cuddle up, grab a blanket, hot cocoa, sit by the fire. It's story time. So we begin in my going into senior year of college here at UF. I had a great professor of economics, and we were studying poverty and poverty alleviation. I was really interested, so what actually works? What moves the needle? At that time, there was something called microfinance that had just come on the scene, and the idea of microfinance is you're giving loans, small loans, to business holders who usually can't access traditional credit in places like banks. And so I said, well, does this work? And she said, go find out. So I went to Mombasa, Kenya, became a microfinance loan officer. My colleague Frank and I went all around the countryside, all around the city, meeting with folks, dispensing loans, taking loans, hearing their stories, hearing how things were going, and generally kind of trying to understand how their businesses were working. And we did so in a variety of ways and a variety of modes of transportation. It was really arduous. But I want to share with you, there was one experience that I had, this woman that owned a kiosk, and she sold items like water, sundry goods, other kind of things, and I came to her one day and I said, well, how's it going? She said, well, not very well. I'm struggling. I said, okay, what's going on? She said, well, you know, I just had to pay this fee to a police officer because he was coming around a lot. I said, well, why did you pay that bribe? Being a little bit self-righteous and ignorant to what was going on. And she said, well, I didn't like getting my kiosk tossed around. I didn't like getting beat up. And so I paid the police officer to stop. But the problem is, more police officers keep coming and asking for more. So Patrick, I'm not able to service this loan today. I can't pay you back. I said, oh, well, why don't you report them? You know, why don't you let the authorities know? She said, well, the problem is, if I report them, I paid a bribe. So I'm a lawbreaker. If I report them, I go to jail and I lose everything. So it was in that moment that I realized poverty, things like this, are more than just not having money. There are a lot of other factors at play. So there was a need to embrace the nuance, a need to dig in and be thoughtful about what's actually transpiring, not just in the textbooks or not just maybe in my initial glance of things, but really digging in. I think as we are in higher ed, for example, we also can be thoughtful, embrace the nuance. Why are tuition prices rising? Why is there such inequality? Why do we see racial differences and problems that we have in our societies? Are we being callous? Are we being a little bit standoff? Or are we willing to engage? Moving along in story time, so in my time in the State Department, we were recruiting expert Americans to go abroad through our embassies to further aspects of our foreign policy. It was a soft diplomacy initiative. And I recruited an expert, really amazing American entrepreneur to go to Uganda and meet with fellow Ugandan entrepreneurs. And so we were sharing ideas. It was very much of a let's talk about each other's businesses and where we can grow. It was a great time, as you can see, sharing stories, having a lot of fun. And we get back, and of course, we did the surveys. We talked about how many people we met with, and we said, oh, we did all the things, and this was great. But I kind of said, well, was it great? Like, how do we really know that it was great? Is it just because we have some metrics and some numbers? What do we actually do there? We're spending taxpayer money. What happened? And so the American entrepreneur and I said, well, it's been about a month since the program. Let's actually reach out and talk to these folks and see if we made an impact, and let's not be afraid of what we might find out. And so we get on the phone, actually it was a video conference even before Zoom, and we talk to this Ugandan entrepreneur. And this gentleman says to us, look, I took your advice. I actually met with the city government that I'm in. I have a solar panel business, and I shared with them some things, and they ended up automating some of their processes, and it resulted in a 150% increase in the demand for my product. And I had to go and hire 15 people. And those 15 people are 15 families that are now provided for, 15 families that are now taken care of. And they're the backward linkages of all of the other things in that community, ordering the raw goods and raw materials. This is just one story, and this is actually something that we are moving the needle in these kind of get-togethers. And so coming back, and when I came to the University of Florida in 2018, Micah Heil and I in donor relations were tasked with, we need to overhaul the annual endowment reporting process. Okay, so we do report out, of course, how is your endowment doing, what are your net investment returns, all the numbers, which are extremely important, but are we actually telling stories? Are we showing the impact to our donors of why they're giving to the University of Florida? And so we created a portal whereby our end users, our faculty and other folks that are using the endowments, hopefully making it easier for them to share these stories. And also we did an education campaign to help them along and kind of say, this is what we're looking for. Don't just tell us about your publications, tell us what you actually did. And so we were actually blown away. There was a case where at the Proton Center, they tell us a story. Okay, well, we're caring for children, 1,500 children we just came upon that we cared for, 80% survival rate. Wow, that's really amazing. It goes on. We decided to reach out to these survivors to see what they're doing, see how they're faring, because again, 1,500 children, that's a lot of lives saved because of you, donor. And then they said, perhaps most importantly, 2 of those survivors are now parents of their own, starting the next generation, donor, because of you, because of what we're doing here at the University of Florida. I mean, we could say, okay, we've treated this number of children, this is the therapy that we use, and that's all important. But man, there's some stories that we're missing. So here we are, and this is I think it was a little bit dusty in the room when I read this, and I think Micah can attest, it was an incredible offering, an incredible story to be told. Okay, finally, so when I was working at Georgetown University, we were doing business training programs across the globe for different companies, and we were working with a mining company in southeast Madagascar, Fort Dafong. Now, this mining company, a year before we arrived, they had built a port because it was on the coast. And the fishermen in that area, the local fishermen, said that the port was affecting their fishing stock. And so the mine said, prove it. Where's your science? Where are your statistical studies? Did you run your regression analysis? Okay, these are just regular fishermen. They're trying to catch fish. They know what's going on in their communities. Of course they can't fund a study. They don't have PhDs on hand to help them with this. And so it was really a big impasse for the mine and the fishermen. And it became such that the mine had a very big problem. It was becoming difficult for their miners to go to work. They were getting picketed, and it was becoming embarrassing to be known to work at the mine because you weren't actually caring for your community. They had the legal license to operate, but they didn't have the social license to operate. So someone in that company stood up one day and said, you know what, we're going about this all wrong. This conflict is not getting us anywhere. We need to engage these folks. These are our stakeholders. We need to sit down with them, meet with them, hear them out, actually listen to them, and see if we can come to some kind of arrangement. And so by the time we showed up in our course, and that was part of what we were teaching as well, on the last night of the course, we were actually invited to a dinner that was catered by the fishermen with the miners together, breaking bread. Actually, it was like lobster and incredible fish. It was an awesome meal they just pulled out of the ocean. But just surveying the landscape and seeing, wow, these are folks that used to frankly hate each other. They're not best friends, they're not besties, but they at least work together now because they've come to an arrangement. And so I really, stepping back and saying, okay, are we choosing engagement before conflict? Are we immediately seeking to fight when we're presented with some kind of obstacle? Or are we trying to sit down and engage and see where we can get? And so actually, in 2018, we launched a new project in donor relations and finance and accounting where we were sending out low utilization letters to fund administrators across campus, letting them know that they had unspent funds. As you can imagine, there was joy and jubilation when the folks got these letters. I'm kidding, that was not the case at all. It was a very new experience, and it was sort of a culture shift. And I received a very strong response from the director of the Graham Center, the then director. And I was a little bit taken aback. And I actually thought about this time in Madagascar, and I said, well, I have a choice here. I can respond in kind, I can ignore him, or maybe I can escalate this and maybe we can kind of fight it out and get them to spend their money. But instead, I really kind of sensed that he wasn't really understanding what we were trying to do. And so I said, can we sit down and have some coffee? I think that maybe you misunderstood the intent of the letter. I'm really sorry that the tone wasn't coming across correctly. And so we did. And over coffee, we bonded. We bonded over our love for history. We bonded over a variety of things, and we became dear friends. He became a mentor. And more than that, we became friends. And one of the last things that Dr. Colburn wrote to me as he was championing the work that we were doing was this kind email. He was an extremely kind person. He actually passed away a year later. And I often reflect and think, gosh, had I chosen to fight him, had I chosen even to ignore him, I would have lost out on this friendship, something for which I'm extremely grateful for. So I think as we sort of look back, and you all have people in your lives and experiences in your professional lives, your personal lives, so what moves you? What really lasts? Are we taking time to reflect? And what can kind of inspire us to change? So thank you very much. Great to be here.
All right, Patrick, great job. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I just want to thank you for coming by. Thank all the speakers. Special thanks to Mike Amish. This is his idea. He implemented it, and he's been leading the charge ever since. Amanda Edwards for her acting lessons and prepping us and helping people get comfortable in front of a camera, which is a challenge, as you know, for all of us, quite frankly, I think. And also Sterling for his input throughout the whole process. And Meg for being so supportive, coaching this throughout this whole process from the very beginning and always being here, because I know you have a busy schedule. But I think that's all for now. Hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully you'll take some tips away and maybe put a little proactivity in your life to help with a situation you need to improve. Take care.